Hey man,
Hey, how are you?
good. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for willing to do this.
Yeah, sure.
So I can just jump around in terms of your career and roles and everything.
Okay.
And yeah, I can just start from the beginning and ask how you or what led up to you being a PA on River Runs Through It.
Oh, you did dig deep. I like that. Yeah. My best friend from high school, his grandfather was Norman McLean, who wrote the book A River Runs
Oh,
Through It. And there's a book by the name, and then really the movie's based on it's a book of short stories, and that is one of them. But hit as part of the deal when Robert Redford bought the rights to that movie from the author, who was sort of skeptical of Hollywood. He sort of built into the deal that a certain number of students needed to be hired in order to to sort of just make it feel like it was at least even if it turned into some Hollywood glamorous thing that defiled the good name of his book. At least some kids would have learned a thing or two along the way. He was a teacher. Norman McLean was. So I got to be one of the students, basically, and the job turned out to be, I was a production assistant, which was it was the first time that I'd done anything in the entertainment industry. It was the first time that I had ever had a job where I was really sort of expected to pull weight as an adult. And it was the first time I had gone anywhere west of Chicago. We were on location in Montana in on the Gallatin River and in the Ozarki Mountains in Montana. We were working on a big, what felt to me like a big time Hollywood movie, but in this pristine, unbelievable setting. And it was an incredible summer of learning and really catching the bug, not just for the business, but also for the outdoors and everything like that. So after that summer, which was the summer after my freshman year in college, I knew what I wanted to do, and I went back to school and started kind of in earnest pursuing acting, and then and held on to it ever since. So yeah, that's what got me started. It's a great question. No one has ever asked about that. So
oh, really?
good on you.
That's surprising.
Yeah.
Well, because I saw the picture that you posted on Instagram. So
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Of course, of course. Yeah. So and there I am. Like again, I'm 19. My buddy's 19. We're playing football with Robert Redford. Who obviously is a gigantic name. At the time, he was sort of like. Even then, he was probably in his 60s or so, but so maybe was not sort of at the height of his stardom, like of his movie stardom, but was this legendary figure already, and also very active, still doing probably a movie or two, a movie a year probably of his own, and then also directing a lot of stuff. And so his celebrity at that moment was huge. And he was, our boss, really. I mean, it was definitely like someone that we treaded lightly around, but he was just like a great guy. And then the other big star in that movie, obviously, was Brad Pitt,
Yeah.
who really had not become Brad Pitt yet. He was a kid. Thelma and Louise, which really broke him, was out, but his next movie, which was I think Cool World, which was he played like the bridge between an animated world and a live action world. A movie I thought was actually pretty great, but didn't do as well at the box office, I don't think. But that was in the can, but it hadn't even come out yet, and so he was just a guy. We were 19, he was 26, the next youngest person basically on the set. So we hung out all the time. And for that summer, we were, good buddies. At this point, I don't think he could pick me out of a lineup, but I always wonder if our paths ever did cross again, and it's not totally out of the realm of possibility because the business is just small enough that it could happen. Although it's looking less and less likely, but I always, if I could have like 10 seconds, I'd need to have like a clear 10-second window to put myself in on his radar. and I just wonder if the recognition would flow in. I've sort of I've thought about that, the possibility of that moment before, and just kind of, what could I say? What would be the succinct way I could put it? Because like I said, we really did have like a good summer together that year, and if you remembered it, it would be good. If not, I would be like an overeager stalker, So I have to play it very, very lightly.
So would that job also be technically how you got into SAG then?
No, although that's a good question too. No, at the time I didn't understand what would have been necessary to become SAG eligible, and I didn't. So I didn't have a speaking role. My entree into SAG was I did a little co-star, a one-liner on a show called California Dreams.
Yeah.
The sort of right when I got out of college, so in 1994, and that was an after show. Actually, SAG after used to be split, and that was an after show. But if you joined as a sister union, if you joined AFTRA and were a member in good standing for a year, then you became eligible.
Mm-hmm.
And as it turned out, that's what I was trying to do. And then as it turned out, right before that year was up, I was cast in a commercial for Checkers fast food. Checkers is, I think it's a spin-off. It's like a Southern version of Carl's Jr. or something, and I got that commercial, and they did, that's called the Taft-Hartley. Though I hadn't joined SAG yet, they paid the penalty, which made me then eligible. So then I joined from that. So it was like sort of River Runs Through It put me on the path towards it. California Dreams, really got me going. And then Checkers sealed the deal for me. So then I became a SAG member after that.
I know it was a little while after, but what was your experience working on Roswell?
Roswell was God. You are good, man. You dig it. You dig it. It's funny. This is the second time this has come up recently for me, because a friend of ours who has been talking to, my son is a filmmaker, and a friend of ours who's a director, is actually the husband of a friend of ours who's a director that we didn't know very well before, is now directing an episode of the new version of Roswell. And he in looking at the old episodes and so on, was like, you were on this show, right? And I was like, oh yeah, a long time ago, but yeah. So yeah, and actually it's funny, there's a connection to River Runs Through It too. That gig was great. It was a lot of times when you're a young actor, you're taking auditions for what are called co-star roles, which are small roles, 1 or 2 lines. Sometimes they're called under 5 roles, or they used to be called under 5 roles, because anything under 5 would be a co-star, and anything above that could be considered a guest star. Usually, if you appeared in more than one scene, you kind of break through to becoming what's called a guest star, and it's just a slightly bigger payday. Because there are more days on set as opposed to just having like one day and one and done. The role of Roswell was sort of it was as the radio DJ of WRZU or something like that, right? And so it required a bunch of talking in kind of like an announcer style voice, and I had been the play-by-play announcer for my college hockey team and basketball team. I went to this school called Colgate University, and so I had a lot of experience, and I hosted a radio show and stuff like that. And I had sort of a persona that I would do comedically, but I would, play around with it. So I auditioned, and this was a, kind of a bigger role, lots of scenes playing throughout the episode. And I got it, and it was a thrill just to get it. I went, and everyone was lovely, young cast of would-be stars. Everyone was very, nice. Not my experience, by the way, on California Dreams, which were young stars of a different variety, who were sort of feeling their status and power
Oh,
in a very strange way, and where it was just kind of like not as fun to be a part of that. But these folks were all nice, and then one of the greatest things that happened was on my first day. I was walking to my trailer, saw someone I recognized, and I walked over to sort of be sure. And sure enough, it was the gaffer or one of the electricians from that had worked on A River Runs Through It,
oh,
and that was probably 6 or 7 years later.
yeah.
And uh, I had been really good friends with this guy that summer. We had gone, again, we were up in the mountains, so we'd go camping. Small groups of us would go do these excellent, outings on the days off. And this guy and I and a couple other people were in like a little tight little posse of folks who would do those kinds of things together. And we were good friends, but it just, lost touch. He was an adult. I went back to school and finished college and all the rest of it. And, lots of things, a lot of water under the bridge by that point. But I bumped it. It was him. And, we reconnected, right away, which was also awesome. And so, yeah, overall, that job was great. Super fun, campy show, but in like a really serious way. And I got to bring comedy to it, which was, I'm comfortable in that space. So it was also like one of those things where I really wasn't very nervous about it. And I might have otherwise been, because it was kind of a lot of stuff to say, but I was able to say it, it all felt very, very doable for me. So it was a good place to kind of, break my myself in.
And there were some other TV shows around that time I couldn't find really sources for, like Push Nevada.
Yeah. So Push Nevada, and I think on that one, I want to say I might have done like a Regis Philbin voice double.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure. Like, so at that time, I think it was Push Nevada. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was this game show. You're right. It's still out there. But at the time, Regis Philbin was the host of it. And he sort of had this very distinct way of speaking. He kind of spoke like this, everybody. And, let me be your host for the day. And I used to do an impression of him. And my agent knew that. And they needed that show had Who Wants to Be a Millionaire playing in the background. And and they didn't want to pay Regis for it. So they had me step in and I auditioned for it and then got to do that. So that was also super fun. That was one, a job where it was like I was getting rewarded for voiceover stuff, which again, it's like, ironically, the two roles you're asking about, at least I could be wrong about Push Nevada. This was a while ago, so it may have been that I appeared on camera, but I don't think so. But in both of those cases, it was voice stuff that got me the gig, for sure. Which was, so the writing was on the wall.
So I don't know if it's in order or not, but it did say that like your first voice credit would have been in the Dino Crisis video game.
Yeah, that was definitely, I don't think it was my first thing, but it was my first big role and certain, it was probably the first significant role in a video game or animation series. And so, yeah, that was, and I played, Patrick, who was kind of like the center of that world, first person shooter kind of, dinosaur survival game. And that was another one that was it was super fun. That was late 90s now, and so we were I was in Los Angeles and then eventually moving to New York, and so I think I did a little bit here and a little bit there, and maybe I was going back and forth a little bit, but it was one of those times where it was the first time, or one of the first times, that I felt like a busy actor, because I was doing a lot of commercials at the time as well, because I was at right around then I was also the voice of this toy company called KB Toys. I was doing a lot of that stuff and other sort of radio spots, still dabbling around in on-camera work. And then that show that came up, and it was just sort of like, oh my gosh. So that was a neat time, because it was the first time The job was great. The job itself was great. But then in terms of like placing it on a timeline in my career, it was the first time that I really was feeling like a working actor. It wasn't just a single job that, it's very tempting when you're a young actor, you get your first thing and you walk into the restaurant where you work or whatever, the pet shop, supply store or what, or whatever. And you quit, like, that's it. I've made it. It's happening. And then you do the job, which usually, as I said, is a co-star. And of course you're finished by like 2:00 that afternoon. And then what are you going to do the next day? And it's like, you made a lot of money for a day, and that feels good, but that's not going to last you very long. And so that it's like, oh boy. And that's kind of, that time in my life was the first, it was the first time I was like, there are enough of these things strung together right now where this feels legitimate. This feels like it's kind of my job, which was an exciting and kind of scary, little moment of, boy, I'm kind of getting what I wished for here, which is, which had always, since that time Unknown River Runs Through It, it was like, I want to do what these guys do. I want to be part of this, so that was again, it's like the job itself was significant, but it was more significant for what it represented kind of in the trajectory of my career and kind of my life, not to get too deep about it.
Was there a specific experience that made you want to pursue voiceover more opposed on camera?
Well, so I do both. To this day, I'm doing both. So ironically, I'll tell a little story in order to drop back and answer the question more directly. But so right now, for example, I was just hired onto a movie where it's a period piece taking place in like 13th century England and France, and I was hired as an actor and where everyone's sort of speaking in these high end sort of posh and also sort of antiquated style of speaking, very affected and kind of comedically drawn, if you like. So it was this like sort of high end royalty kind of American probably version of that for the comedic value in it. And I was hired as an actor and then asked on top of that to be the dialect coach for the rest of the cast. And the director knows me. We know each other well from other projects and things. And he knows that I actually have a PhD in educational theater, specifically focused on voice, so I'm qualified to do that. And he felt like they needed someone to kind of keep an eye on the consistency factor of the dialects that would be coming out, and asked me if I would do both things, for the movie, which was thrilling and awesome. And so I'm doing it. And again, it's related, like, yes, I'm doing on camera, and it's really related to the voice stuff. So for whatever reason, from a very early part of the work, mostly what I was being hired for, or as I was getting hired, I'd like to think there's something there, but at the same time, a lot of the gigs I was getting had a lot to do directly or indirectly with the way I would use my voice, and so it became that sort of had always been on my radar. And then, frankly, right away when I started doing voiceover, it was consistent. It was logical. It was, I had wanted to do it. I started doing on-camera commercial and some, sitcom and stuff, that kind of work. But while I had done that for 5 years, and then I asked somebody told me at some point, you should get into voiceover. You'd probably be good at it. And I was like, I've never really thought about it. And at the time, I really didn't know much about it. So I inquired and asked around, and I was told, well, you should take a class and then make a demo and then get an agent and see what happens. And I did those things. And unlike just about every other part of the entertainment industry, there was a logical kind of progression of like, take the class, work hard, do the thing you're supposed to do, ask for some meetings, get those meetings, step in, etc. just kind of a ladder to climb in a normal way, the way the real world is supposed to work, but the way the entertainment industry seldom works. And it just kind of fell into place for me. And I got very lucky early on. Actually, the first job I really got was the thing I told you as the voice of KB Toys. It was my first audition outside the agency. There had been some auditions inside the place, but it was the first time that they sent me out into the field to like go to a casting director and have an agent have an audition. And I did, and it was for this major campaign where you'd be the new voice of this whole product line, or this whole organization. And it promised to have several television spots and several radio spots, both nationally and regionally, and for a while. And at the time they thought that company would last forever, and it turned out it didn't. But for a bit, it was a big deal. So, and it was a huge job to get right out of the gate. And but again, it was like an incredible learning experience, because I would have, 5 or 6 sessions a week for the better part of 2 years. Whereas before that, I had never had a single voiceover session. So I got very comfortable in the booth very quickly, because I was just doing it a lot. And so, and that's really, as much as anything, when you're working, especially in voiceover, feeling at home in the little closet that becomes your whole world. That's my little booth right there, is a big deal, because it needs to feel like a creative, safe space. And that happened for me really quickly, or, really early on. And because of that, it just, I then had a big, like sort of a top tier agent as voiceover representation. And I was going out for top tier jobs and booking some of them, so the level of that side of my career shot way past what my on-camera work was then, and even what it is now. I still love it. I also do a lot of theater. I love that part of the work. It's just that voiceover is I've just had the best luck with it, and it has always been that. It's always been true that the work I've done, even on camera and in the theater, have been related to things that I was doing vocally. And so it just turns out like that was just kind of one of my strong suits, I guess. And so I wasn't too blind to see it, so there we go. Yeah.
And when anime did come along, considering your experience up until that point, did you take to dubbing easy, or was it still difficult for you?
Interesting again. So probably my first, though I had done a little bit of it, my first real experience with anime was Naruto, which to date, continues to be like I'm wearing, a Tobi shirt right now, and you see there's Tobi behind me and a Tobi mask over there. This is the like, who knew at the time, or even before COVID. Actually, I will say more about that later. But I have never totally understood or realized the reach that anime has in general, and specifically that Naruto really has had. So Naruto, basically, I was just like every actor, hungry and wanting more, feeling like I was working, but it never feels like enough. You always want something else. And a friend of mine had been doing some dubbing at a place called Studiopolis, which is a studio out here that does a whole lot of post and anime dubbing and so on. And he suggested that I reach out, and told me I could drop his name. And he was like, well, just send him your animation demo and see what happens. And so I did. And they had me come in to read for a project that, an anime project, and asked me if I had done any dubbing. And I said, sure, of course I had. Though the dubbing I had done was live action, like I had done ADR work, but a different sort of style. And I went into the booth, and obviously it was different right away, but it's not, I was doing quick math, basically, like, okay, I see what's happening here. It's obviously it's cartoon. It's not real. And they're going to play me a little snippet. And I need to sort of match what's happening in the Japanese performance to the something about the performance I'm doing. Okay, that makes sense. there were lines in isolation. So it's like you get actually like a spreadsheet of the lines that you're going to speak. And it's really just, a sentence or two, kind of isolated to the specific moment in the show that you're dropping the dub for. And they play it for you first, and you get to watch it with the Japanese performance, and then they roll it back, and then they give you what are called beeps. Yeah. So it goes beep, beep, beep. Yeah, you know about this. Beep, beep, beep. The fourth one's silent, and that's when you go. And you find the rhythm of that. And then you just start speaking. Theoretically, they have the timing of it lined up so that the what are called the flaps, which is when the anime character is moving his mouth or her mouth, matches up basically with the timing of your read. But there is some up and down. You got to look at the text, you got to look at the thing, depending on how long the line is. That can be tricky because you don't really have enough time to memorize a big chunk, but you can probably get most of it down at pretty quickly. But again, all of this stuff was sort of, I'd never actually done it, so I was kind of like finding it as I went. And I just went in and kind of read a little bit, and I got it. They gave it to me. And then what was neat is that, so then I got the job. Hey, that's great. And then I came in to do the first episode, or what I thought was the first episode. And it was actually bits of, or like scenes from, they were doing like 4 or even 5 episodes at a time, and they have this gigantic, at the time they had this gigantic 3-ring binder with episodes 417 to episode 465, all of those episodes in this one giant binder, and they're marked with tabs on the side, and you had to find the episode, find the scene, and then find the line number, pull it, like lay it all out on the table or on a music stand, and then find the specific line they're talking about and make sure it's yours. And then that's how they match it up. None of this is rocket science, but none of it was explained to me either. And so again, this was like another whole day, or another full session of somewhat stressfully sort of being like, they were like, okay, so we're going to go to 417 line 365. It's Tobi's second line of the thing, and here's what's happening. And as they're describing it, I'm looking around like, well, what do you mean by 416? What do you mean by line? And then I see a folder, I just open it, and and I'm like, oh, start again, like, see that the episodes are numbered. Oh, I see 416. Okay. And then I see that the lines are numbered. Oh, okay. And I'm bluffing the whole time. I'm bluffing because I'm sure, I'm sure they're going to find out any second. I don't know what I'm doing and kick me out, and, but the bluff worked. I got through it. They kept me on. And then we ended up doing that show, I think, for 8 years, which is crazy. It was not, we weren't recording every day or even every week. I would go in and record 3, 4, 5 episodes, and then I wouldn't, on a day, and then I wouldn't hear from them for 3 months or something like that, or I'd do maybe three sessions in a month and then not hear from them for a whole year, or what have you. And I never knew what was going on. I didn't know anything about the story. I'd never seen any of it. And, it was only later that the story started to unfold for me as it became more accessible on different platforms and so on. But a story I always tell is that I had no idea how popular the show was getting or was. And I went to pick my son up at a play date. My 16-year-old now he was probably 7 or something. And I went to pick him up at a play date, and his buddy's older brother, they were playing in his room, and he had a shrine to Naruto, and the Tobi character was in the shrine. And I was like, hey, I played that guy. And he was like, he couldn't believe it, and I couldn't believe that anybody knew or cared, so it was this thing. I was like, this is a bit different than I thought it was. But anyway, I think I've probably answered more than your question. The short story about anime, I fell into anime because I wanted more work, and that the production company that my buddy had put me in touch with was doing stuff. And again, like pretty much all, it's probably, you probably know better than I do, but pretty much the first job I got offered was with any kind of longevity was Naruto. And and that kind of just lasted forever. And then for having done that, I've gotten to do a lot of other stuff as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, because one signature question I always like to ask is like, what is the darkest emotional headspace you've had to get into for a voice role?
That's a good question too. That's a great question. So it's funny, there are two answers really. I mean, Naruto, for the consistency and the depth of of story and so on, is without question like sort of one of the best opportunities I've ever had to flex a little bit as an actor, because I just love the storytelling in it. One of the things, especially right, the last, handful of episodes, and the whole arc of which is shared in the video games. He is Obito. Tobi is now revealed as Obito. Really kind of breaks down his reason for the destruction that he's so hell-bent on causing, as being actually a deep empathy and caring for the human race, as being incapable of enduring the kind of pain that he himself had to suffer. Mm-hmm. And he wants to protect them from having to feel the kind of pain that he had to endure. And the best way he can think of to do that is to, freeze them all forever, essentially killing them, which is like, good intention, bad execution, right? And so, no pun intended. So it's like, but that the fact that it comes from a place of actually like, of like purity and love and pain, I think is just like that, to me, is like, and this whole idea of there is no light without the dark, which is essentially the lesson that Naruto gives him in the end, is like, he and Naruto leave their bodies and are floating above in space, and they have this epic conversation. These are like page-long monologues of like, this is the way the universe works and all this. And Naruto explains, like, your heart may be in the right place, although at that point I don't have a heart, so it's ironic. But your heart may be in the right place, but the joys of life, think of the wonder of life, think of the excellence of life and the love of life. And none of that is possible and means less if it comes without a cost, if it comes without sort of an other side, that, and the yin to the yang kind of thing. And in the end, Obito realizes it and is like, God, you're right. You're right. And then sort of concedes and just allows himself to be destroyed. And it's like, I love that. That's probably the best storyline I can imagine. Mm-hmm. And so that is great. The nature of anime is just that because you do it so chunked up, it doesn't always feel like it's not always like the longest performance. It's sort of not a sustained feeling of dropping into headspace, as you say. Still, I'd like to think that I found it for the work that I got to do on those episodes or those moments. The other one, though, that came to mind was and this is an unlikely source, but there was a video game called The Darkness, mm-hmm. Which is like a really violent, really sort of like graphic and R-rated kind of game. But it was so The Darkness 2 was the one that I was in, and it's like the writing on these things is sometimes so deep that it's impossible not to find some serious satisfaction as an actor looking at what's going on, because in that case it was like the Upside Down before the Upside Down existed, because Stranger Things was years away from ever coming about. But so it was basically Grand Theft Auto kind of game up on the surface.
Yeah.
But then if you took this, there was this drug going around called the darkness. And if you took it, you dropped into your own mind, which basically was inside an insane asylum. And everybody on the up world had an alter ego on the down world. And so I got to play. I was sort of like the scummy arms dealer on the up world, who then became this like, effete philosopher, on German philosopher, in the inside of the psychotic mind. And at the end, I got to play the big hell beast also. But so it was like, it just was super fun to get to do that. And it was heavy lifting. It was flexy in terms of having to, I was doing two very different voices, but with a similar through line. And there had to be some connection between the two, and so on. And so, there are lots of roles that jump out. But those two in particular, I always think of as, Naruto doing Tobi and Obito both. It was such a gift. And again, because it lasted as long as it did, it was also one of these things where it just like kept on teaching me things, and kept on, even during times where, gosh, I wasn't doing much else, I would get a call, like, hey, we've got a few episodes for you to do. And it's, oh yeah, I'm a working actor again, like that feels good. And, it's funny because as an actor, there's feast and famine is a really real thing. And, there are times where, in spite of anything you've done in the past, you feel like there's nothing right now, and that maybe spells a different future. And Naruto was an incredible thing, if for no other reason, at times, if for no other reason than because it kept me connected to feeling like I was like, a viable artist. And that was important. I know you asked about dark headspace. I don't know that I necessarily answered that, but I took it my own direction, if that's okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know it's not comparable to either of those, but even with a more comedic role as Hawk's Eye, like at part of the end where he sacrifices himself for Fish Eye and Tiger's Eye, that was really cool to see too in the series.
Yeah, no, thank you. That I agree. And again, like I don't control any of that. It's just sort of like, oh, that's another cool. And I find these series, again, it's like, that's a great example too. I mean, anime in general, I think, is telling much greater tales, obviously, than what shows up on the page. And I think that the sensibility of that genre, that style, is that the sort of the simplicity and the sort of like the cutesiness of sort of the art style, as juxtaposed with the depth of the storyline, is partly what makes it so poignant, I think, because there's like, there's a paradox or an irony there. I, again, through having been lucky enough to have done a pretty large handful of things at this point, I think I just have become very aware of that, and I really, really love it. I love being in it, because at first, it presents a little bit like melodrama, and it feels a little bit almost like silly. If you just are looking at the surface of it. And when I first got involved, to be quite honest, when I'm playing Tobi, I know they don't give you the whole script. They give you just your lines. And I'd never seen the show. I'd never read the manga, and I didn't know anything about anime at all. At the time, it was very new on the scene for someone like me. I just hadn't seen it. And so, and I'm playing this kind of silly character who's all up in here. Oh, Datara, I'm giddy as a schoolgirl, and he's saying all these silly things in this silly voice, wearing this mask that, that doesn't allow his, face to ever be known by the people he's talking to. And I would only go in and do these like isolated moments where he'd be like flipping around in trees, or, having like, thinking to himself on the side of a pond or whatever. And, I didn't know what was even going on, and it all seemed very silly to me. And then little do I know that this whole other giant, plot is cooking, and all of these other through lines are happening and spilling into and out of the rest of the world. And, you know, it just like, I love the fact that there's room for both kind of silliness and comedy and the depth of thought and kind of like philosophy that seems to permeate all these shows in one way or another. And so, yeah, it's just, I think that the anime stuff has just been really exciting to be a part of.
And with Sailor Moon, was it always Hawkeye that you were auditioning for, or was it other characters?
Yeah, no, that one was just Hawkeye. And in fact, I think that one just was given to me based on the work that I had done with Naruto. I think if I'm wrong about that, I will, you know, happily concede. But I think I don't think I even had to audition for that one, which is not always the case. But the anime world is small enough where sometimes you're kind of you know, just offered something based on the fact that they know you can do it. They could always take you off of it if they needed to, but in that case, it was it just kind of popped up. And really, so Hawkeye in the series just showed up for a season, so it was like they were casting for that season, and the brothers were going to be the central point of the season. But so it was like, do you want to do this one season of Sailor Moon as Hawkeye? We're going to start, you know, in a couple of weeks. And, you know, of course I said yes. And then, you know, we did it. We banged it all out in a bunch of sessions, and it was great. And I had no idea that show is like crazy popular. And, you know, it's the same thing where it's just like people, you know, really love the show, and that I got to contribute to it a little bit, and you know, and not mess it up too badly, I hope, you know, was just a super cool thing.
And one other main anime character that's kind of unlike others you played is Tenma in Twin Star Exorcist.
Yeah. That one, you know, it's funny. I thought that was going to go deeper, or I thought that was, I should say, longer. I thought that I didn't know exactly where not knowing much about the show, again, as always. I didn't know where it was going to go, but I loved the art. I love the way Pinma looks, you know, and it felt exciting and fun to play that character, and the plots of the episodes that I got to do were super fun. You know, and so right about the same time I was doing Twin Star Exorcists and Bungo Stray Dogs, both of those at the same time. And the Penma character seemed so interesting. And the character from Bungo seemed less so. Ango is his name, and seemed less not less interesting, but less significant. I didn't know whether or not that character was going anywhere, whereas the other one seemed so grand that it was like, ooh, this one's like, I wonder what's going to happen. And as it turned out, that one I didn't have much to do after a few episodes, and Ango from Bungo Stray Dogs ended up going through the rest of that season, and then they did a movie where he was sort of the narrator of the whole thing, which was cool. And now we just actually did a couple of episodes. I don't know, maybe a few months ago, of a new project that seems to be a spin-off. I don't know how much is out there about it, so I probably shouldn't say too much, but the you know, that character I thought was not a long-lasting thing, but as it turns out, has been around for quite a while, and again, it's just been super fun. And that's an interesting thing, because I'm not really doing much of a voice there, as much as it is just playing the role. Which is fun. And as a voice actor, sometimes it's hard to trust that that's enough, you know, because again, if you think of like the thing that started me on this journey is the Tobi Obito pair, you know, one of which is way up here like this, and the other of which is down here, you know. And so these are like two voices that are like at the extreme polar opposites of what is my actual natural speaking voice. Mm-hmm. And so there's part of you, even though you probably know better, because I've been around a minute, I know better than to think that that's necessary for every role, because that I associate that style of acting with, or that style of voice acting, I should say, with anime. to do a role and just do it in my own voice was kind of like, are you sure? And, you know, and they were like, yeah, just act. And it was like, all right, you tell me, let's try it. And that's pretty much what I do, you know, almost nothing, maybe a little bit of a little nerdier, maybe, you know, or different. I don't know if you can get any nerdier than me.
Oh, it's funny because when I did interview Jeff Nimoy a little while ago, he said that it was really surprising when he was directing you in Ultraman, since you had so many like incidental characters.
I love that. I didn't know that you talked to him about me. Jeff is that was somehow that was the first time I'd ever met him. But he had recently signed with our then agent, the agency that we both were with for a little while. But
Yeah.
When he was directing Ultraman, and he knew we had a lot of friends in common because he'd worked with a bunch of our friends, you know, in Digimon and Pokemon and so on, and then they did their cool movie and all of that. And getting to work with him on Ultraman was so fun. And also, that was one where casting from Studiopolis put me in that without me really reading for anything. And I just came in and it was like, try this guy. And we didn't know what he was going to sound like. And then I was usually when I'm in there, I'm working with I've worked with almost all of the directors that work at Studiopolis quite a bit. So we play a little bit to find it, but I'd never met Jeff. And so I would I don't know, he didn't know what to expect from me. And then I was like, oh no, this guy doesn't have a track record to go on. Right. So I don't know if he's going to trust me to kind of find it, but yeah, no, then finding the main character, Inguro, I think is his name, was really fun. And I love that guy. That, you know what, that may be the darkest Headspace, because that guy is like, you know, hidden away, like wanting the world to end. And it's 8 episodes, or I did 8 episodes, and I think that's his arc. And then he dies like a, you know, fairly grisly death. And it's like, he's pretty dark, that guy. And I loved doing him. And then Jeff would always give me one, you know, play the cop on the, you know, on the corner over there, or play, you know, the bookseller or whoever. And you know, getting to do a bunch of that stuff was always super fun. And you know, so, and getting to work with people like him is another great part of this gig, is that, you know, it's a small enough world where you do start to bump into people again and again. And everybody's great. Everybody is, you know, especially in the workspace, there is an understanding that we're making decisions and we're serious about the art form, but we're doing it in a playful way that allows for creativity and some some risk taking, because that's what's necessary as actors and, you know, and artists. And it's only really possible when you feel confident enough that no one is going to be like, wrong, stupid, get out, you know, like, because that fear factor tightens you up and kind of makes you freak out just enough to not offer the thing you might be thinking about, you know. And if that happens, you could miss out on some really juicy stuff. So, the fact that was able to happen on that show in particular with someone I had just met really speaks more about him than about me, because he made me feel like that was allowed. And so I went for it, and he dug it. And then we just moved on. So yeah, that's cool. That's neat. I hadn't realized that you'd talk to him. If you do again, or if anybody watching, or you know, especially if he sees this episode, you know, what a great guy.
I did want to ask if it was any involved of a process to become the voice of Jet in the Sonic franchise.
Yeah, that was a little bit more of a process. That to be fair, I'm one of there are several Jets, you know, and so I really there was like a series of video games that somehow was I don't know why even became my little niche on that. Same studio, Studiopolis. It's like you're seeing a theme here now. They've got faith in me for, you know, for having worked with me a lot. They handled those particular games in that franchise, and they knew that it was in my wheel, that it was in, you know, sort of like an easy range for me. And and had me read on it. And, sure enough, I got to do it. There's a jet back there actually. And then that job was like pure joy. It was because there's not a lot of speaking in those games, so it's lots of like one-liners as Jet, like get out of here, like that kind of stuff, like just kind of one-offs. And you just kind of go in and bang it all out, and have a cup of coffee, and pat each other on the back. And it's a great, that franchise is so giant and so awesome, and there are other people doing so much more than I had to do, and it was super fun and neat to get to do what I was offered to do. And it was just one of those jobs where it didn't require that much of me. That's neither understating how important it was or overstating how easy it was for, or how good I am. Just to say that it was one of those gigs that was like, ooh, I know this guy, I can do this voice. There aren't that many things to do there. There aren't such huge scenes or big lines to say. I've been in this studio and worked with these people a ton before. This is like one of those things where it felt like a gift just to walk in, because it was like, it's like going home and getting to do something great. So that's how that was. It was more fun than being like any kind of an arduous process at all.
So in terms of upcoming things, like what can you talk about safely?
So yeah. So the thing that I am most excited about right now is this movie that I'm working on. So I've done an awful lot of stuff with this group called Broken Lizard. Broken Lizard is they've done movies like Super Troopers, Beer Fest, and so on. And I've been in almost everything. I've actually been in everything they've ever done except for the original Super Troopers. And the story behind that is that I was offered a role in it, but I would have had to fly myself back to the East Coast for it. And the plane ticket cost $500, and I only had $400 in the bank. And so I would have gone in $100 into debt in order to do the movie. And I couldn't do it. This is when we were kids, basically, early in the days. So I didn't do it. And that, of course, became their most famous movie. So it's the one I didn't do. That is the movie that we're working on. And those guys know me. And again, they sort of hired me on as a dialect coach and an actor. And we start shooting tomorrow. On Monday. So I'm really excited about that. And excited to be working on it. There's a project called Gingy, which is an animated show that is going to launch in the United States at some point, but I'm not sure what platform yet. It's a Russian production company, and it launched on on a version of YouTube in Russia. I don't think it is YouTube, but it is like sort of a streaming platform in Russia 2 weeks ago or so. And this is sort of a younger audience show, maybe 6 to 12 or something like that. And I get to play a whole bunch of characters, a big sort of large handful of characters and lots of different accents and things in that one. And so that's another thing that's coming out soon. And this other movie's about to start shooting. So couple neat projects in the pipeline at the moment.
And every interview I do is asking, what do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, again, you're a great interviewer. Yeah, you have great questions. Yeah, no, I appreciate this a lot. These are all it's fun because we're treading on some territory where I've gone before, but you're finding new ways to get into it, and it's very that's like a breath of fresh air. I appreciate you, man. It's great. Yeah. My legacy, so I have 2 kids, and I want them to be kind, and I want them to be happy. I want people to know that I care about other people, and I care about this planet. And I want, I hope that some of the work that I leave behind can put some smiles on some faces, and maybe make some people think a little bit. If I can do those things, I think that I'll sort of sleep easy. The biggest thing for me is a sincere desire to help other people and to be of service. and to share some kindness in a time and a space where sometimes those things seem like they're kind of at a pretty pretty high premium and sometimes a little scarce. So if I can put some more of them out there, that's my goal.
Okay. Well, thanks. I'm glad that we got to do this.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Very, very nice to meet you. And I appreciate it. And, our paths will cross again sometime, I hope.
You're actually my 85th.
Oh, nice. Wow. Congratulations. That's great. Yeah. Keep it up. Keep it up. These shows, these have come out of nowhere too for me. The sort of, younger people doing Zoom or YouTube style interview shows and getting great guests and getting on and working with people is sort of a new phenomenon. I do feel like what is, for me anyway, is new since COVID, and it's great. I love it, and keep it up. Stay with it. Something in this, having the wherewithal to get talent and get people booked, get interview subjects booked and on your show is a big deal. It's not easy, and you ask great questions, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. I can, once I have it up too, I can send it to you.
Let me know. I'll put it up there.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right. Nice to meet you. I'll talk to you later.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.